We don't understand the science of melanin, so we allow people who don't even have our type of melanin to chat absolute foolishness to us. If I know you better than you know me, I can influence you. But if I know you better than you know yourself, I can control you. The easiest way to confuse someone is to make them think the opposite is true. Yeah. And they do that a lot with black people. So a lot of the things that we think is normal as black people, they're very abnormal. The way the system works, the easiest way to confuse someone is to make them think the opposite is true. So we're being taught that melanin blocks sunlight. The opposite is true. Melanin absorbs sunlight. Yeah. And that's actually how we're protected from the sun, because it absorbs it. And because there's so much energy, it dissipates it as heat. So your melanin absorbs it and then dissipates it. From start to finish, I can see how not knowing about melanin and being taught things that are untrue or, you know, half-truths about melanin could lead to you not truly knowing yourself and lead to conflict in the future. Yep. Melanin is kind of like the human version of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll splits the water molecule into oxygen and hydrogen. Turns out melanin does that as well. But melanin goes a step further. Melanin can recreate the molecule. Science is logic backed up by evidence.
Greetings and salutations. I'm Alicia Mullings and this is the Sense Only podcast. This podcast is for those who are tired of the noise, disconnection and distraction in the world. It's for those who know that we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. Today, I have a very special guest, a guest who's been mentioned on this podcast numerous times, and now he's finally here. Oh my gosh, let me just say, I could do a usual kind of credits introduction, but I'm going to say, in this introduction, I'm going to speak from the heart. There's certain people who you meet in your life who you're glad you was alive at the same time as them. People who are making a serious difference in the world. People who are changing lives. People who need to be heard. And I can definitely say I am truly honored to introduce to you the one, the general, the superstar, Mr. Leon Marshall.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Amazing introduction. Leash, we're there. Finally, I'm here.
You reached.
Finally, I reached. We're there.
Oh my goodness. Leon, please tell the people who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Leon Marshall. They call me the scientist because of how I break down science in a very simplified way. I went to university in Luton and I was studying sport and exercise science. And I was studying anatomy and physiology. I've always been kind of fascinated with how the body and the mind works. But at university, I was just, for whatever reason, they taught science in a very confusing way. And I left with more questions than answers. So when I left university now, I kind of went down a rabbit hole and started studying science from a black perspective. My sisters gave me books from Dr. Llaila Afrika to Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and other people, and Dr. Sabi and all that sort of stuff. And around that time, I got introduced to melanin, even though I knew what melanin was. It was the thing that covered my skin, but I didn't realize that there was more to it than just the skin pigment. So when I started going down that rabbit hole, I was like, God damn, how come they don't teach this in science? This is quite amazing. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey going down that rabbit hole and learning more and more about melanin. And then because I found it so mind-blowing and so amazing, I was just like, why doesn't everyone know this? I felt like it was my duty to teach people about this. So long story short, I created a course called the Hidden Science of Black Holistic Health, and that was about 10 years ago. I started it at CSEP, where Robin Walker does his Black History courses. And I started delivering it there, and it just grew from there. Like for those of you who know about CSEP, that room upstairs is very small. It can fit, if we put all the chairs in it, it can fit about 30 people. We used to ram it out to the point where I said, I got to move this. And then I started delivering it at my university. At the time, I was working at London South Bank University, started delivering it there. Then we started to get 50 people and more. And then me and my sister were thinking, how can we promote this course? Because it's just so mind-blowing. I feel like every black person needs to know this stuff.
Definitely.
So then we were like, well, how can we promote the course? And then my sister gave me the idea to put on events and do big events, and then the event promotes the course. And the first event we did was the Hidden Science of Black Hair, and that was at London South Bank University, and that had over 400 people there. And then that was just what started the Hidden Science Academy. And since then we've been doing courses, events, online stuff, and it's kind of progressed onto doing wellness weekenders and retreats away and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of organically flourished. So that is the whole story in a nutshell.
And you touched on your book on melanin.
Yeah.
And I've got my copy here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad it doesn't look pristine, because you know that I've been reading it.
You've been reading it,
all sorts of bits and things hanging out.
Yes, indeed.
So as much as you've been here, obviously, about, I don't know, half an hour, I thought let me share certain things with you.
All right.
Live. And I must say to you, literally, I was reading some more this morning.
Yeah.
And it brought me to tears.
Really?
And the reason why, what moved me, I was like, first of all, Leon, do you know what you've done? No, seriously, do you know what you've done with this book?
What part moved you? I'm intrigued.
First of all, everybody needs this book. And that's not just me gassing, and it's not just melanin people. No, well, everyone's melanin. So it's not just black
or highly
people.
melanated people.
This is it. Everyone needs this book. And as you've mentioned several times in the book, in terms of little people as well, the children need it. I was just moved in terms of this book First of all, I love to learn, just standard anyway. But the learning I got from your book, it seriously moved me, and it also helped me to see myself. I found it empowering, and the list goes on. And I was like, so many people need this, and they need the feelings that I was experiencing. It needs to be everywhere. This needs to be in all educational institutions and beyond. This book feels like a paradigm shift that needs to happen, basically. This book is to educate other educators. So there were so many layers that brought me to tears, because I was like, first of all, we don't have much people studying, and scholars are dying out. The fact that you've done this work and you're presenting it not only in the book but just showing up. I was like, this is why I had to call you superstar, because it's so special. And I was like, as much as I know you and I see you, I even more seen you through your work and through this book. And I just seen how essential it is for all of us and beyond, generations who come after us. And I'm like, do you know what you've done? And then I was in tears, and I was like, and this is why I had to just put in that introduction, that I was like, I actually know this person. There's people who move us in life and in the things that we know, and there's people who have existed who, depends on the kind of person you are, you're like, oh, I wish I could have known that person and sat down and had a conversation with that person. Like, I'm sure there's many people who would love to have had a conversation with Marcus Garvey and Bob Marley, and the list goes on. And I'm like, Leon, I know it. And I feel like you're going to be one of them people. I feel like you're a legend that people need to know. They just don't know yet. Nice. You're showing up like that. And I was like, I'm moved, because it's so powerful. As I said, we need to know this. And you've done the work, and you've presented it, and you've put it out there. And I'm like, I just urge everyone to just pick up this book. It's essential knowledge, and I'm going to keep rambling. So,
but I do feel like when it comes to the work that I do, because I do study this stuff. So I've studied the likes of Dr. Amos Wilson, who was one of the most powerful black psychologists, and the work that he used to do books, and he used to do events, and he used to do lectures, and he put out some amazing, powerful information with regards to black people and psychology, and he wrote the book about the development of the black child and that sort of stuff, the psychology around it, saying that black children and white children, it's not just the skin that makes them different. It's everything that they've been taught since birth. Underneath the skin, their biology is different, all that sort of stuff. So if a black child and a white child grow up and they have some form of mental health issues for whatever reason, you can't give them the same treatment. You can't give them the same therapy because it's not the same experiences that they're going through. Whereas today, there's like a universal kind of blanket way of treating people with mental health. Not really, as in if you're black and you got mental health, you can't be receiving the same treatment or therapy than someone who's white.
Right.
And you can apply that to everything.
Right.
You can apply that to health, you can apply that to all that sort of stuff. But yet, when we're sick, we go to the doctors, they give us the same medication as everyone else and blah, 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 same surgery. And that omits the elephant in the room. And I always say melanin is the elephant in the room. So the fact that they'll treat us the same, you're omitting the elephant in the room, because the fact that we have a type of melanin called Eumelanin, which is different to yours, means that we should be receiving different medication, different therapy, all that sort of different education, all that sort of stuff. But because they intentionally, this is my personal opinion, they intentionally omit the education of melanin, so everyone's confused about it. They give people the same thing. So we're eating the same foods, we're having the same therapy, we're having the same surgery. Do you get what I'm saying? When it shouldn't be like that. And I say all of that to say that the stuff that I'm putting out, I know based on me studying Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Llaila, Afrika, and all the people that came before me, I know that just me putting it out there is important for it to live. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because Dr. Llaila Afrika, he's one of my mentors, my spiritual mentors. I met him, I told him what he was doing. He was blown away by what I was doing and that sort of stuff. But he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
However, his lectures are still on YouTube and his books are still here. So people who are coming to find themselves and want to learn about their health from a black perspective, they can go on that sort of journey because of the work he's left. So when he was alive, he may not have got the credit that he deserves or the accolades or whatever, but the fact that he's put out the work, he will continue to help people. 100%. Do you get what I'm saying? And I look at that with what I'm doing. I record everything that I do, all my events, I'm putting them on YouTube, all my previous lectures, I put them all out there.
Yep.
And people are just gonna somewhat stumble on them or hear about me in years to come and be like, wow, this guy's from London, from the UK, and he's boom, boom, boom. So that's why I do it. I know I probably won't get the flowers I deserve right now.
Hence why I just gave you some.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. But that's I'm very aware of how this thing works. So my thing is just put it out and let people stumble across it. Because my thing is, when I was learning about Dr. Llaila Afrika and Dr. Francis Wilson, and I read those books, I was like, wow, those things were blowing me away.
Yeah.
So I know people are going to have that when they see my lectures online, whenever they see it, whether it's today or 50 years time, or they read my book, whether that's today or 50 years time, they're going to be blown away. And that is enough for me. I'm just going to continue to put out what I think is important for us to understand ourselves.
I don't know what to say.
And I think it's important. And I think it's important because people will look back on it the same way. I wasn't alive when Dr. Amos Wilson was doing those lectures and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I've watched those videos, damn near all of them on YouTube. I've been like, wow, this is powerful information, man. This is amazing. And I've been so thankful because I can tell, and he even says it in some of the lectures, that I'm not getting any money for this. I'm just doing this. Do you get what I'm saying? And they got donations and all sorts of stuff. So the effort that was required for them to put on that event, and for the people that come, and if you know about Dr. Amos Wilson, you watch some of his lectures, some of his lectures had big crowds, some of his lectures had maybe 40 people in them. You get me? Because sometimes the camera would kind of swing around to the crowd and you'd see them and you'd be like, what? 40 people? Why is there only 40 people there? And that's big Dr. Amos Wilson. Yeah. They don't even realize who was in their presence, who was giving them that education.
This is it.
If he was alive today, I would love to have gone to one of his events or sat down and listened to him Dr. Llaila, Afrika, even Dr. Sabi, who's not with us anymore, all these people. So it's important for us to continue this and continue to just put it out there, not with the intention of receiving flowers, if you get what I'm saying.
Of course, absolutely. And that's why I was also moved to do that for you, because I know that you do it for the love of the people, you know, and love of the information. I can tell that you're doing it, you're just doing work. I see that you received the call and you're stepping into that. And I see that everything you're doing is literally of service. So yeah, I see that there's no expectation for it, and hence why I would be like, okay, I see you, I'm going to give you your flowers on the camera.
I appreciate that. Yeah, most definitely. Because sometimes, when you don't hear anything, you feel like, what am I doing this for? But every time I do events, I do get people coming up to me and just saying thank you. Just thank you.
And feedback is, I know we don't need validation, but it's also nice to have feedback, you know what I mean? So hence why I like to give feedback. So once again, thank you. A big thank you for all that you've done, all that you are doing, and all that you're going to do as well. You know, it's of such major value, and I pray that you continue to inspire more people to step up, because it's like, people doing this kind of deep work and research, I feel like it's dying out. Do you agree or not?
When you say this research, specifically for...
Not specifically this. Like, if you look at all the names that you've just listed of the elders who are out here as a group doing several sections of the work that needed to be done. Yeah. In this day and age, right now, today... I don't know what that list is looking like, to be honest.
To be fair, there is
it's not massive.
Dr. Yaki Awaken. He's doing some powerful work.
He is.
There's Bobby Price? He goes by Dr. Holistic on social media. He's quite big. There are a couple, but they're all in America. A lot of the stuff, or a lot of the people who I'd probably mention who are really, you know, pushing, especially if we're talking about health, if we're talking about other avenues of, you know, black wellness or whatever, there are lots of people, but a lot of them in America. When you're thinking about over here, with regards to health from a black perspective, there's not a lot talking about what I'm talking about with regards to melanin. There's not a lot.
Yeah.
There was my brethren who said to me, you need to write your own book. He was like, how can you not have a melanin book out? Yeah, he was saying to me, this was a couple of years ago, he was saying to me, how can you not have a melanin book out with all the knowledge you have on melanin? These times I was doing courses, I was doing events and that sort of stuff. My brother Joe Dash, and he came out with a melanin book. It's called The Melanin Effect.
Okay.
And that was in 2019 or something? Something like that. Around that time, he came out with a book called The Melanin Effect. And I never forget seeing this book on Amazon and thinking, someone from the UK who I know has got a book on melanin on Amazon. That's powerful. And I was bigging him up saying, well done, man. You got a book about melanin. You've joined all the other people that have got books about melanin. Like, and he was like, bro, where's your book? Are you mad? Of all the people that should have a book on melanin, you should have a book. And I remember I wanted to write a book, but not on melanin, on health, yeah? But I had, over the years, been gaining so much knowledge on melanin and making so many notes, literally on my phone, over 10 or so years. When he was saying to me, you need to write a book, I'm like, I've got a book, it's in my phone. Like, I've got so much information and knowledge on melanin in my phone. All I need to do is create chapters and put it together. So when he kind of planted that seed in my head around 2020, and he's like, come on, bro, of all the people that should have a melanin book, you need to have a melanin book, like you of all people. And then I was like, you know what, I've got one, I just need to put it together in my phone. And then since he said that, let's say that was 2020, within a year, and I mean within a year, the book was out.
Okay, amazing. Sense Only family, listen up, real talk. I don't co-sign any and anything on this show, as you can imagine. Everything has to make sense. So when I tell you about AfiaKos, listen closely. This sunshine pink dress you see me wearing in this episode, it's their boutique infinity dress handcrafted in Ghana. Kente, Ankara, and batik pieces that turn heads and tell a story. Every purchase supports artisans paid a fair living wage, beauty made responsibly. Head to AfiaKos.com and use the code SENSEONLY for 15% off. Wear the culture, honour the roots.
Within a year. So for other people, it might take years for them to put a book together, because I felt like I'd already had all the information over the 10 years of me gathering information. From when he put that idea in my head, within a year, like within 10 months, I had self-published and put out the book. Like, that's how quick it was.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, because I'm also a visual person, I really appreciated the visuals in the book as well, because as much as you're explaining things, it's nice to be able to relate it in different ways. But obviously I know that's because you're a lecturer, and
Not just that.
And you've educated people of different levels and different ages.
Yeah.
I appreciate your approach, you know?
Yeah.
And even just like your analogies and things that you used made it so, it's so much easier to receive such deep information. You know? Just even how you related the melanin to the chlorophyll and the mirroring of that. Yeah. Literally, I was like,
but that's the reason why I feel like melanin is such the big elephant in the room, because I always say to people, they teach every child at school about photosynthesis. Every child is taught about photosynthesis and chlorophyll and how plants live. They teach every child about plant life, because it's so important for you to understand the ecosystem of plants, and the fact that, you know, we breathe out carbon dioxide, they breathe it in, then they breathe out, the plants breathe out oxygen, and then we breathe it in. You need to understand that. The life process of plants is very important to the life process of human. Then I started to do my studies and realized that melanin is kind of like the human version of chlorophyll. There's actually a scientist that wrote a book called The Human Photosynthesis, and he talking about melanin. He's saying melanin is the human photosynthesis. He says that it does the same thing. Now, when it comes on to what melanin does, well, let's start with chlorophyll. When it comes on to what chlorophyll does, chlorophyll splits the water molecule into oxygen and hydrogen. Turns out melanin does that as well. But melanin goes a step further. Melanin can recreate the molecule. So photosynthesis, the first step in photosynthesis, when it receives the water from the soil, is to split that water up into oxygen and hydrogen. And then it uses the hydrogen for an energy process with regards to photosynthesis. It actually uses some of the oxygen as well, and then releases the rest of the oxygen. That's how we get oxygen. But melanin can not only do that. So chlorophyll splits the water molecule and then says, here you go, here's oxygen. Melanin can split the water molecule and put it back together.
Amazing.
Like an on-off switch, like power. You want your power on, power off. That's what melanin does. And most scientists won't admit that, because that would be a huge paradigm shift in science. So no scientist, you type in ChatGPT, can melanin split the water molecule like chlorophyll? They'd be like, no, that's pseudoscience. It's not proven, when scientists have actually proven this, but they'll just say those scientists are pseudoscience and blah, 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 because they don't want people to admit what melanin truly does. So they'll just say, melanin the reason why you got melanin is to block the sun, to protect you from the sun. Do you get what I'm saying? And because of that, I can see from start to finish, I can see how not knowing about melanin and being taught things that are untrue or, you know, half-truths about melanin could lead to you not truly knowing yourself, and lead to conflict in the future. So that's the reason why I pride myself on teaching science in a very simplified way to even a 5-year-old could understand it. That's the reason why I put color images in the book as well. And again, when I was learning science at university, we'd have color textbook images. You open it up, but you don't see black people in it. You know what I'm saying? You never see images of us in there at all. So you're learning science, but you're seeing, you know, pink skin, you're seeing white person's brain, white woman's, you know, fertility issues, whatever. But that's how you're learning about anatomy and physiology. My thing was, let me make a book, and every time you open it up, you see yourself.
Yep.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because that's just going to help you understand things. And that's another thing about learning something. If you're learning something, whether it's easy or complex, but it's about yourself, you're going to be more interested in it.
100%.
And that is the reason why at school, when they were teaching me about biology and chemistry and physics and all that, I'm like, how does this relate to me? I hated science at school because of the way it was taught. Because they make it seem like science is something that's out there. If you know science, like think about that guy who a lot of people believe is a great scientist, that black dude. What's his name? Tyson something? Not Tyson. Is it Tyson?
I know who you're talking about. I can hear his voice. Is that light-skinned brother with the small afro?
Yeah.
He talks about space and everything.
Exactly.
I know who
exactly.
His name.
A lot of people associate him with science or being the scientist, yeah?
Yes.
He talks about astrophysics and space and all that sort of stuff. How could that relate to you as a black person? You're like, okay, I don't want to learn about all that stuff, so you don't want to learn about science. But if I say science is what you see when you look in the mirror, now all of a sudden you're going to be interested in science.
Yeah,
I used to start all my lectures like that, whether I was teaching children, college students, or university students. I used to be like, who loves science? Put your hand up. And then about maybe a quarter of the room would put their hands up, yeah? Then I'll start teaching them about melanin and start teaching them how science is you. You are science, yeah? And then at the end of the class, I'll be like, who loves science? In other words, who loves yourself? Do you love yourself?
Right.
Because you are science, fam. When you see, the fact that you can see melanin is in your eyes, that's science, fam. The fact that you can hear, that's melanin in your ears. Yeah, the fact that you've got rhythm, that is the melanin being able to catch the beat and process electrical impulses to your brain and that sort of stuff. And then your brain sends out electrical impulses to your muscles to move to the beat and all that sort. That's science, fam. So now who loves science? In other words, who loves themselves? Now everyone puts up their hand. Do you get me? Because when you teach science in that way, in other words, you are science. Every time when you're sleeping and melatonin is getting released, and that melatonin is not only helping you to sleep, that melatonin actually repairs your DNA at night, yeah? And that melatonin can take you somewhere. Talk about astrophysics and all that. That melatonin, the deeper it goes, you could literally go to sleep and travel. That's science, fam. That's what I want to learn about. I want to learn about science when you're talking about me. Talk about me when you're talking about science. And that is, again, the elephant in the room. People talking about science, but they can't relate it to human beings.
And that's when it gets exciting.
Exactly.
Literally. And then that's when you're happy to dive deep. And so that's where I've been with your book.
Nice.
But it's good that you just touched on the sun. Because this is one thing that winds me up royally, is the whole sunscreen conversation. And I needed you here to talk to the people about sunscreen, please. Because I'm just like, first of all, we're black people. I know thousands of black people, good portions related to me, but over the years of my existence, I've met a lot of us in different parts of the world, from the motherland, to different countries in the Caribbean to South America and beyond. I've spoken to a lot of people of all the generations, and I can say, of all the thousands upon thousands of black people I have encountered, I've not met, heard, saw anybody who's got skin cancer.
Right.
Zero.
Right.
Of generations, there's a lot of black people. But yet still all of a sudden, over the past how many years, it's been promoted to us that no, you need to be using sunscreen. Yeah. I'm like, I've been to countries that are hot. Yeah. Deep into the sun.
Yeah.
In different parts of the world, and conversed with all these people of different generations, and not one person has had a conversation with me about anything called skin cancer. So somebody please tell me where this whole we now need to use sunscreen narrative has come from, and why is it being adopted? I need to know.
Well, in my book, I've actually got a section called Melanin Code of Silence. And in that section, I kind of talk about how them not talking about melanin or the truth about melanin creates confusion, yeah? And based on another one of my spiritual mentors, Dr. Neely Fuller, he says that confusion will always lead to conflict. So whatever you're confused about is going to lead to conflict. And that conflict can be internal, mental health issues or whatever, or external. You being confused about something could lead to you being in conflict with other people. yeah? So when you're trying to learn anything, the main thing is to have total clarity to avoid confusion. So when it comes on to how they teach us about melanin, they create confusion on purpose. And then a wise man once said the easiest way to confuse someone is to make them think the opposite is true, yeah? And they do that a lot with black people. So a lot of the things that we think is normal as black people, they're very abnormal. And let's just go with, because we're talking about the sun. And even though they're abnormal, doesn't mean they're quote unquote bad.
Right.
It's just abnormal as a black person to be doing this, yeah? So let's start with shades, wearing shades when you're out in the sun. If you knew the science of how your melanin is produced, I talked about melatonin. Melatonin is first produced in the eye when you wake up and the sunlight goes through your eye, it kind of activates it, the start process, yeah? And then there's a cascading effect of melanin hormones like melanocyte stimulating hormone, melatonin, all that sort of stuff goes into your bloodstream. And then that kind of activates a process called melanogenesis, which is the process of your body making melanin, yeah? That starts with morning sunlight and then progresses throughout the day. We mess up that process by just putting on shades, yeah? But over the years, we've been taught through, the system that we live in, that wearing shades is normal. And again, there's a lot of people that they kind of need shades. The sunlight's a bit too much for their eyes, you know what I mean? So they kind of need shades. But as a black person, you've got a lot of melanin, especially if you've got obviously black, brown eyes, whatever. You've got a lot of melanin in your eyes, and that melanin requires sunlight. So every time you wear shades, you kind of stop the process. Again, I'm saying it's abnormal. I'm not saying it's bad, because a lot of things we do is abnormal, but not necessarily bad. Like wearing trainers and all that sort of stuff and disconnecting yourself from the ground. Your feet are supposed to be in the soil, grounding, earthing, that sort of stuff. So we do a lot of things that are abnormal, that are kind of against nature's processes, yeah? So wearing shades is one of them. So I'm not gonna go around finger wagging people for wearing shades, even though it is abnormal. Now it's coming to, again, the way the system works, the easiest way to confuse someone is to make them think the opposite is true. So we're being taught that melanin blocks sunlight. The opposite is true. Melanin absorbs sunlight, yeah? And that's actually how we're protected from the sun, because it absorbs it, and because there's so much energy, it dissipates it as heat. So your melanin absorbs it and then dissipates it, yeah? So it becomes non-dangerous for you, yeah? Right. So it absorbs it, dissipates it. It's kind of like what vibranium does. Because when you watch the film, if Black Panther was doing something and he jumped, he kind of absorbed the energy in the suit and the energy would be dissipated, yeah? So melanin absorbs sunlight and then dissipates it. So it doesn't block it. But again, the easiest way to confuse someone is to make them think the opposite is true. So now you're being taught that your melanin blocks sunlight. And not only that, they turn around and say your melanin does block sunlight, but it's weak at doing it. So you need a little bit of help. So here's this white cream that we just created a couple years ago to help your melanin block sunlight, yeah?
It's wild.
And again, it's abnormal. Even if that was true that your melanin blocks sunlight, it's abnormal then to put on something to block sunlight if your melanin's been blocking sunlight for all of these decades. And again, in my book, I've done research to suggest that most of the sunscreen products that are out on the market have cancer-causing chemicals in them, yeah? Mm-hmm. So you're putting on this white chemical cream to block the sun, to protect you from skin cancer, and there's cancer-causing chemicals in that white chemical cream that could give you cancer in the future. And then what will happen is Black people, for whatever reason, we believe these people and we put on sunscreen for years and years and years, and then 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, there's going to be a story that says Black people are 4 times more likely to get skin cancer. And we don't know why. Yeah? And then Black people are going to be scratching their head like, how are we more likely to get skin cancer? What's the solution? Well, here's the solution. Here's this drug that you can take, or here's this surgery that, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's because we don't understand melanin.
Right.
We don't understand the science of melanin. So we allow people who don't even have our type of melanin to chat absolute foolishness to us. And that is it. When someone, here's the thing, like, again, a wise man once said, if I know you better than you know me, I can influence you.
Absolutely.
If I know you better than you know me, I can influence you. But if I know you better than you know yourself, I can control you. And that's it. These people study melanin like it's the most important thing on this planet, which it is. So they study melanin like it's the most important thing on this planet, and then just don't tell people what they found. Yeah, they study it. So they're studying us. They study how we behave. They're studying, our biology and chemistry. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that they're using melanin in bioelectronics now. So
Really?
Yeah, so they can take melanin because it's a semiconductor of electricity and then use it in bioelectronics. So who knows, in years to come, probably right now, they're gonna start using melanin for gadgets and bioelectronics and all that sort of stuff, yeah?
Wow.
And meanwhile, they're telling you that your melanin blocks sunlight and that's the only reason why you have melanin. They're utilizing your melanin for bioelectronics and all this electrical stuff, yeah?
Right.
But you just think that your melanin is some natural sunscreen, not realizing how powerful your melanin is at splitting the water molecule into oxygen and hydrogen and utilizing that for electrical purposes, semiconducting purposes and that sort of stuff. So we are totally confused when it comes to melanin.
Right.
But again, if I know you better than you know yourself, I can control you. So they don't want us to learn about melanin at all, because it defeats the purpose. If you know about yourself, then I can't control you. The whole point is for me to control you. The whole point is for me to be able to put out foolishness like black people are more likely to die from this, black people are more likely to die from COVID, and then you ask why, and we're like, we're not sure why, and you believe us, and then we've got the solution. Well, here's the drug for the solution. Here's a vaccine for the solution. Do you get what I'm saying? That is the whole point of keeping people confused.
Right. The
The whole point of keeping people confused. So what's the antidote? What's the antidote? Clarity, total clarity. And that's what they don't want. They don't want us to have total clarity about who we are.
Right.
Hence the reason why they will never tell us the truth about melanin. Never. Because it will lead to total clarity and black people will stop doing foolishness. Black people will be like, okay, I can't eat these foods because it's detrimental to my melanin.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't really go a couple months without getting enough sunlight because it's detrimental to my melanin. I might need to change countries. I might need to change how I'm living and all that sort of stuff.
People start moving differently.
Exactly.
And as I said, that's why I felt even additionally empowered by your book, literally, as you said, as a starting point.
Yeah.
People just get that, start learning what they're learning in there, and then go down some level of rabbit hole. As I said, that can create a paradigm shift.
It could, it should, and I hope it does. Could, it should, and I hope it does.
But as you just said, that there's people, the powers that be out here blocking. Because that book is educating educators. And when egos and everything else and institutions pop in, would they adapt that though? Because
of course not,
could unravel a lot of things.
Of course not, but this is why, again, I like to teach science in a very simplified way and keep it along the lines of logic, because I've got my own definition of science. Science is logic backed up by evidence. So when people are, even if you don't know the truth, when someone's telling you something, is it logic? Does it sound logical what they're saying? Yeah? So when someone's saying to you that black people need sunscreen now, they need to be protected from the sun, does that sound logical? Because wouldn't your logic kick in and say, okay, if we need it today, why didn't we need it yesterday?
This is what I'm saying.
Why didn't we need it 100 years ago?
Why didn't Granny need it? And all them, and everyone who's still back home in wherever home is, still don't need it. So what's happening?
We were out in the sun more back then than we were now. So if we need it now, how come we need it now with less sunlight exposure than we did 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100,000? Just explain that. Just explain the logic. Before we get into the science, explain the logic. We need it today, we didn't need it yesterday. Why didn't we need it yesterday? And if we did need it yesterday, where's the cases of us dying from skin cancer?
This is what I'm saying to you.
Yesterday.
I still don't know, not one.
Exactly.
I know a lot of black people.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we do get it, we'll get it in areas where there's not a lot of melanin anyway. People get it in like the white parts of their hand or in their feet. Even they said that Bob Marley had skin cancer. Where did he get skin cancer? In his toe. In his toe. What's his toe doing? Was his toe out in the sun getting too much sunlight, yeah? His toe was out in the sun, getting more sunlight than his face and his arms. His toe. They said Bob Marley got skin cancer in his toe. Do you get what I'm saying?
We know the crosses of that story.
Avoid the science. Let's not even go into the science because the science can get confusing. Let's just stick to logic. He said that my man got skin cancer in his toe. Yeah? Let's just go into the logic. So black people can get skin cancer, but they get it in places where, you know, the area is not even exposed to the sun. Just explain that.
Yeah.
Just keep it logical. Because again, when it comes onto science, they love to confuse us. Because the way they teach it, again, like that, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that's his name.
That's it, yes.
Like him, he'll talk science and it's like, wow, it's like, it's all out there and it's all like intellectual. So you'll think he's a very smart guy. That's how you learn science. You got to be really smart. No, not in my book. Science is logic backed up by evidence. In other words, 2 + 2. Do you get me? So your 5-year-old child can understand science just by using logic and common sense.
Right.
When you go past that, then it's all of a sudden it's, well, I'm this scientist and I know more than you because I've been studying. No. What you're saying, is it logical? And is it backed up? Can what you say be backed up with logic and evidence? Because they'll say things to black people and just not back it up. Literally, they'll say, oh, yeah, your melanin blocks sunlight. There's no evidence to back that up. You need sunscreen on your skin. There's no evidence to back that up. So they just literally say things and black people run with it because we don't study ourselves.
This is it, but it's so strange being in a day where people don't question anything anymore. As you just said, people can just tell you any old rubbish. And people just, it's a case of people say jump and they're just literally, it's not even how high, they just jump. And I'm like, when did this happen? What is happening?
And it's because of habits as well. Because again, once you start doing something that is abnormal, but you're doing it over and over again, sometimes regardless of the science, regardless of the truth, you'll just run with it. Do you get what I'm saying? So for example, with the shades, even if everyone knew the truth with regards to wearing shades, how it blocks the process of melanogenesis, and it's very important because you need to get infrared light through your eyes in the morning. So really, as soon as you wake up, you should be outside and making sure that infrared light goes through your eyes. All of that, we're so habitual as people and we've been doing this for so long. Knowing that you're still putting shades.
It's true.
Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Knowing that you're still putting shades. So they say knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power, but a lot of people know better, they don't do better.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people know better, they don't do better. And my grandmother used to say, if you can't hear,
you must feel.
You must feel. So that is when people change their behavior. When they're in pain. So all the stuff I'm saying about, boy, I don't know if you should be putting on sunscreen, you know, because according to my evidence, there's cancer-causing chemicals in this. Right. And you're like, whatever, man, I'm getting burnt. Let me put on this sunscreen. Then 2 2s, you get diagnosed with the big C. Now, all of a sudden, let me look at that Dr. Sebi book, or let me read about Dr. Llaila, Afrika, or what was Leon saying, and what sort of foods should we eat with regards to the big C? Yeah. Now, because you're in pain, now you want to know. I'm saying we should really be doing these things before we get to that point.
More
but a lot of us, we won't until we get there. So a lot of people, they'll contact me through WhatsApp or whatever and say, oh, Leon, my auntie's got, I don't know, stage 4 kidney cancer or something like that. What does she need to take? And I'm like, she needs to change her whole lifestyle. There's nothing I can tell her to take right now at stage 4. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, she needs to change her whole lifestyle. Whatever she's eating, stop.
Yeah.
Stop whatever she's eating. Like, literally, the first thing she needs to do is fast and all that sort of stuff. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to give people advice or whatever. But that's how people change dramatically when they're in pain. Right. They wait until they get into pain before they take on this knowledge and take on this information. Other than that, I'm gonna wear shades, I'm gonna put on sunscreen, I'm gonna do all this stuff that I shouldn't be doing for my melanin because, you know what I mean? It's habitual, it's what I do.
It frustrates me because you could say it for so many things. It's just like how you've just done your event on black hair, you know, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself. But even like people have been told for years and years and years in terms of like relaxers, for example. Crazy chemicals you're putting in your head. People still burning off their scalp to this day with it.
Exactly.
You know better, but you're not doing better.
Yeah.
You know.
And then it leads on to their hair being mashed up, which goes on to another abnormal thing with regards to hair, where who cares what your hair looks like? Now just put on this wig and just stick it down on your head. So
the glue.
The glue, yeah. So they glue it down on their head. And now you can just change how you look. Who cares what's underneath? In other words, who cares about what's naturally growing out of your scalp? Let me just buy this and stick it on my head. Good. And that is abnormal. But again, because people are doing it on such a regular basis, it's now become the norm. And then it goes away from nature. Well, another way of confusing, especially black people, is to disconnect them from nature.
Right.
You get me? So you should be earthing. Let's disconnect them from the earth. You should be out there absorbing sunlight. Let's disconnect them from the sun. Yeah? Let's disconnect them from the right sort of information. It's all about disconnecting us from nature. So now, as a black person, you see the average black person, especially the attack on women and beauty and that sort of stuff. You see the average black woman and there's not a lot that's natural about her. Not a lot. So the hair, the nails, even the skin, the eyelashes, whatever it is, there's not a lot that's natural. So that tells me that, let's say you was to remove all that, would you look in the mirror and say that what you see is beautiful?
Some would.
Some. It should be all. Every black woman should be able to say, naturally, I am beautiful.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't have to buy beauty products to be beautiful.
It's true. And I think, and on this one, as a woman, I can say it varies in certain things. So like for me, for example, I'm not defending nothing. I'd say with a bare face, obviously I'm on camera, I have makeup on. I can say, in terms of my bare face, I'm happy with my bare face. I'm off camera, out in the world, I have my bare face, and I get chatted up the most when I got my bare face. Trust me, I walk down the road, I'm like the level of
fresh.
Anyway, stories for other days.
Fresh.
But
natural.
my point is, in terms of how I would say, in terms of how I personally operate, I feel better within myself, more so, bare face, when I'm not in the UK. So I'm if I'm in climates that are more conducive to us, as in more sun, and I feel like my complexion evens out more. So if I'm in Jamaica, I'm in wherever in the motherland or wherever, the most I might put on is on one shine on my lip and keep it moving, and I feel happy. I feel, because I'm here, and I actually, and this other women can chime in with this in the comments, we actually see the difference in our colour changes. So like if you're a woman who wears foundation, you're going to wear a different foundation in the winter to the summer. It makes such a big difference. So I'd say that to say there's some women who will use makeup and things like that to draw on a whole new face, or some of them just use it to just enhance the features and the beauty you've got already. So I'm like, that's me kind of defending the sisters a little bit, including myself, because I'm like, you know what, these people who are confident and happy to walk out with their bare face, either the lack of sun environment, and you're looking a little bit patchy around here, you're going to buy the thing, innit?
No, that's true. That's true. And a lot of women will defend that. But again, a lot of women will defend that, but again, when you're defending something, sometimes it makes you ignore the system that we're in. So the system that we're in is attacking black men and black women differently. So the way it attacks black women is through your beauty, and the way it attacks men is through your masculinity, So the way it attacks women, black women, is, all right, your hair's ugly, your nose is ugly, your lips are ugly. Do you get what I'm saying? You're ugly, your skin complexion is ugly. So do things to make yourself look quote unquote beautiful. Right. In other words, put on the makeup, make sure you change your hair, make sure you're, you know what I mean, you got color on your nails or whatever it is. But that's society saying to you, you're not beautiful just naturally. And a lot of women, they recognize that, and like you say, they can they can flip between the two. Right, I'm doing a podcast, I need to wear makeup, or I'm at a business meeting, blah, blah, blah. But when I'm just out, do you get me? I'm fresh, I'm just, you know what I mean? I don't need to put on makeup, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of women, and a lot of women won't admit this, but a lot of women can't do anything without the mask.
You know what? It's funny because I've read in many places where some women were actually like dating a guy and will make sure they jump up first in the morning just to do makeup and fling on whatever on their head and whatever before he wakes up.
Yeah.
That's extreme.
And let me just say this, because I'm not, again, finger wagging on women who wear makeup. However, the science behind it, and I talk about this in my book as well, there's a lot of toxic chemicals, like there is in sunscreen.
Yeah, there is.
There's a lot of, so as black people, really, if you're gonna go down the road of sunscreen, you might have to go down the road and think, okay, is there any black-owned companies or anyone that's got some natural sunscreen that doesn't have cancer-causing chemicals, toxic chemicals in it?
Yeah.
Black women might have to do that with hair products.
They do.
And with
makeup,
cosmetics
and
as well.
There is.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because a lot of them, again, have cancer-causing chemicals in them.
Yeah.
So you're putting this thing on your face, and you're putting it on your face daily. And what we need to understand, especially with melanin, not everyone's skin, whatever you put on your face or in your hair goes straight into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
Straight in. So if it does have toxic chemicals in it, I don't care how great it makes you look, over time, that's going to have an effect on your health.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to take my word for it. There is scientific evidence to suggest that some of these cosmetics can lead to infertility issues or cancer or, you know, obesity, all this sort of stuff, diabetes, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's because of things that we're actually doing to ourselves, but we're not aware of them. And then once you become aware, you have two choices. You continue to do it, but find some ethical, you know, cosmetic brand that doesn't have cancer-causing chemicals in it.
Yeah.
Preferably black-owned, yeah. Or you stop that thing. And for a lot of us, again, because we're habitual and the way they flipped it, they've made the abnormal normal and the normal abnormal. Now it's hard for a lot of people to stop that abnormal. Do you get what I'm saying? Even though you might be aware of it, it may be hard for you to stop. Even me, like, I know the science behind shades and that, but shades look good sometimes. So sometimes if I'm out in Jamaica, I might fling on little shades, you get me, and look cool in that, even though I know the science behind the shades and you really shouldn't be wearing it. You see what I'm saying? But again, we're creatures of habit, so even then you know that you shouldn't be doing something, you'll end up doing it anyway.
As I always say, environment's everything.
Environment is stronger than willpower. I always say that.
This is it.
Your environment is stronger than your willpower. I don't care what you say, you know. If your environment is not conducive to how you want to live, then you're going to succumb to the environment. Yeah, and that's especially when it comes on to food and that sort of stuff. You can be quote unquote vegan and healthy and all that, but if your environment is not conducive to how you want to live, you're going to eat things that you shouldn't eat. It's as simple as that. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're going to eat things that you shouldn't eat.
Right. And on that note, I'm so happy to say this episode is sponsored. My first sponsor. This episode is sponsored by AfiaKos, and my dress is by AfiaKos, and as is Leon's jacket, and that just happened by chance.
Yes,
so
indeed.
They have sponsored this episode and are offering a 15% discount on anybody who comes via the code Sense Only. So if you go on AfiaKos.com and put in the code in the cart, Sense Only, you get 15% discount. And AfiaKos is spelled AfiaKos.com. Yeah, I love that.
Love that. Big up Rich as well. Big up. Is it Rich?
Rich, yeah. Big up Rich. Yes.
Large up.
Love that. And I met him at your event.
I know, so did I.
Look at him. See, Rich making big moves out here.
See it there?
I got people wearing his garms, so.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, Rich. So.
But that goes on to what we really should be doing with regards to this stuff, is working together, and it's kind of group economics, because that's one thing that unfortunately we don't do as much as other people, is work together and make sure that we're benefiting in various ways. Do you get what I'm saying? So me doing my event, I booked the speakers, and then I had the African market or the black market. So the black market, they'll benefit from, a lot of people coming to the event and that sort of stuff. And there were people who booked stalls from London who came up, and they're getting introduced to a whole new audience in Birmingham. You see what I'm saying? And just that alone, it's like the black pound, like keeping it circulating in the community before we spend it out of the community and that sort of stuff, I find is very important. And my thing when it comes on to spending the black pound or spending money with black people is it should be quality first, because a lot of people be like, oh, you should spend with, promote black owned businesses and spend with black owned businesses. Not if the quality ain't there. I'm not just gonna spend and promote and do that if the quality is not there.
Absolutely not.
The quality should be there first, and then you decide, okay, do you know what, black owned, I'm gonna support, boom. But it's quality first, especially when we're talking about business. Yeah. It's quality first, and that's what a lot of us don't understand. When people will be like, oh, you come support us, and the service is shabby, and the quality of whatever they're selling is not up to par. You got to be up to par with everyone else.
Definitely.
So, and think about this, and it is difficult in business, because especially when you're talking about, hair care products, that is monopolized by people who don't look like us.
Yes.
So if you want a hair care, if you want a product, and this black-owned company is selling it, and this Asian company is selling it, yeah, and the quality is the same, but because they've monopolized it and they've kind of outsourced and kind of shut out this black-owned company, the black-owned company don't get it, the same product at the prices of the Asian one. So now the Asian one, their price is damn near half the price of the one of the black-owned one. So now you're like, okay, the quality is the same between the two, but goddamn, if I go with the black-owned company, it's gonna hurt my pocket a little bit. So then you end up going with, the non-black-owned one. So we need to be aware of certain things like that, so we can kind of navigate around that, because that's gonna be a downfall if we're saying, yeah, support black-owned, but the black-owned one, the quality may not be there, or two, the price is more expensive than going elsewhere. So a couple of those things we need to keep in mind as well when it comes on to working together.
But it comes to seeing the big picture as well, because as you just rightly said, yeah, it's gonna knock your pocket a little bit. And granted, I know the cost of living is rough right about now, like I get it.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke.
As you just said, there's a major importance in pound circling. You know what I mean? There's certain community, if I'm going to say the community, because I don't want people just getting in their feelings, but there's a certain community who we all know, and they will, like, say somebody's living out of London, for example, and I know this is like a fact, they will drive into London, into their specific community, like Stamford Hill, that will give you a clue. Go and buy a loaf of bread and go back to wherever it is they've come from. They will drive miles out of the way to go and support their community and make sure their pounds are circling within their community and go back home. Yeah, it costs more because it's cost you petrol, it's cost you time, but you've put the money back in, and we see how their economics is flourishing in the world.
There you go.
Incredible, because they've all got a unity in the plan of the bigger picture of what needs to be done. And I think these are certain people we can learn from, and certain things that we can adapt, and be less in a space of self, and actually know that, as I say on this podcast, we're all interconnected. There's a bigger picture beyond you yourself.
But that's another way of them confusing us is, especially melanin. There's a scientific paper from many years ago that called melanin the organizing molecule. So melanin does various jobs in the body, but it's about organizing, especially electron flow. It organizes and brings things together and makes things work as a unit inside of the body. Yeah. So it's very important, and the way I see it, that's how we should be working together. We should be working as a unit. Yeah. But one way they confuse us is to make us think that we're all individuals and we should just all be doing our individual own thing.
That's not natural to us, though.
Exactly. So again, breaking us away from what's normal and natural to us. So then you'll get the person, the odd black person who's doing well. Do you get me? But it's not in a community setting. Do you get me? They're just over here doing well. All right, that person's a millionaire. Well done to that one black person. Do you get what I'm saying? Whereas the other groups, they all work together. You get what I'm saying? And the business is run by a family.
Yes.
And they pass it on to the family, and do you get what I'm saying? So that's another way they confuse us, making us believe that we should just, work hard individually. Oh, I'm just going to university and I'm just working hard for me, and I need to get a good job and do for me and progress my life, and that's all great. And you, quote unquote, may make it, but then you're disconnected.
But what's the point in making it alone? Because I'm always saying, like, if I'm making moves and I see my life progressing, I'm not, who wants to be at the top by themselves? It's a bit lonely up there. Like, that sounds like one of the saddest things that could ever happen personally.
Yeah.
I'm like, you still want your people around, you still want to be able to make, like, if you're somebody who's not trying to floss on people.
Yeah.
And you actually really care and you want the best for your people as well, not just yourself. It's a different mindset. But unfortunately, as you're saying, tying into what you're saying, when people are just out for themselves and want to be like, oh yeah, I'm now better than you type of thing. It's a nasty mindset. Like, why are we thinking like that? Keep it together. We've always traditionally been together. And I know that that's my experience, especially only 2 generations back. I know it's a lot more, it's respectfully to what I've gone in London, but we've kind of held it tighter further up the country, like in the Midlands. Because as I say, in terms of the beauty of how I was raised, was literally the generation, which was my grandparents' generation, who came over by invitation, I like to always add. They held it together. They were unified. No one's trying to be better than the next person. And as I've spoken about on this actual podcast, they had group economics. It's only 2 generations ago.
True.
Like, I literally can say my granddad, some of his just his peers, so cousins, brethren, whoever, they collectively pulled together and bought one big house together. Ain't nobody living in that house. They had it as, because there's so much racism, whatever, back then. It was a social house for them all. I guess it was also an investment. But they would literally go there and go and play dominoes and get away from their wives. Hey, do what you gotta do, Eddie.
Do what you gotta do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but my point is, it can be done. It was done not that long ago.
True.
And some people still got their grandparents. Go and have a conversation with them and tap into that mindset. We can bring it back.
What makes it hard though is back then, it was obvious that we needed to come together.
Yeah.
Because back then, Windrush generation and the racism was more overt.
Yeah.
So they knew, we need to do pardons, we need to work together and get our yards and tear. Now, this is another way they confuse us. They make it seem like there's no problem.
Right.
So you speak to young people these days and they'll be like, what racism? What are you talking about racism? My best friend's blah, blah, blah. My best friend's white. And nah, man, there's no racism. Do you get what I'm saying? Oh, we don't need to use that excuse. And they don't realize the impact of racism. And one thing most young people don't understand is what racism actually is.
Right.
They don't understand that. So they don't understand the economical effect, the effect it has on mental health and that sort of stuff. They don't understand any of that. So they don't see uniting as a solution, because what are we uniting for?
Right.
You gotta ask, why do black people need to unite? Why would we need to unite? We'd only need to unite if there was a common problem we needed to solve. Because why else? If we all lived on the planet in harmony with each other, there's no reason for us to unite and work. You just work with whoever you want to work with and spar with whoever you want to spar with. It's only when you've got a unique problem or a common enemy or a common problem that you're trying to solve that you have to work together. And because a lot of us don't think that we have a common problem, there's no reason for people to say, yeah, learn group economics, let's work together, like our grandparents did back in the days. Like, they're looking at it like that problem doesn't exist anymore. We don't need to do that.
That's scary.
Yeah.
To think that people could miss so much.
Yeah. These days, racism, whatever you want to call it, is very covert. It's very covert, and
when you're not paying attention.
When you're not paying attention.
From my eyes, I see it so clear as day.
Yeah. A lot of us do, but many people don't. Many people don't. I've got young nephews. They play gaming, and when they're gaming, they're in their room, but they've got their set on,
Right.
their headset on, and they're talking to people all over the world.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, all over the world, all different races and cultures and blah, blah, blah. You can't tell them there's an issue with race in this country. You can't.
Yeah, because they're sitting in their yard on the team.
Exactly.
When you go out into the workplace.
Yeah. It's a different
Listen,
thing.
don't get me started.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing is, if you are
corporate
from
life.
a young age disconnected,
Yeah.
again, look, I always say that they make the abnormal normal
Right.
and the normal abnormal. So a lot of children are growing up doing things that are abnormal. Yeah. So if they made the abnormal normal and you are disconnected from, so let's say, your culture. Yeah. So you're growing up in London, but you're not really cultured. You don't really know your history. You don't really know your heritage and all that sort of stuff. Then you're not gonna have any grounding as to why. Let's say, for example, you should go with someone from your community. Like, why? Why do I need to have a partner from my community? Why? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're not cultured and you're not grounded in your heritage and all that sort of stuff, or proud of what your ancestors have done, why then would I need to? I'm just gonna go with whoever I love. Whoever I fall in love with, I'm going to go with. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's when it starts to get into all that.
That's why you see me as well.
All that foolishness that people get into, innit? You know what I mean?
Silence.
You get me? You love who you want to love. Love who you want to love. Love has no color and no gender. You know what I mean? So love who you want to love. Doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, still other races subscribe to something differently, because certain races, if they bring a black person home, I'm sure their granddad's got many things to say. I'm sure their uncle's got many things to say.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly. But that's the thing. They teach us to,
Mix
love
and blend.
everyone, but they don't even do it. That's what I love about other cultures and other groups, though. They say things through their actions.
100%.
Whereas we say things through our words. Do you get me? So we'll promote black love by saying black love. Mm-hmm. We'll promote black love by literally saying, well, you're on social media and it'd be hashtag black love, or do you get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Whereas they do it just through action.
Through action.
Do you get what I'm saying? They don't have to put hashtag Chinese love.
They don't. I was literally thinking Chinese as well. So
They don't have to do that
to bring
at
someone black
all.
home to your Chinese house.
They don't do that at all.
God bless you with that.
They just they do it through behavior, and that's what we need to get. We need to do it through behavior as opposed to hashtags and slogans. But that's.
I think the ship sailed, to be honest. What can we do? And it's like, you know what? I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Forget it.
That is a big one.
It's a big one, and because I'm literally just like thinking of young people in my family as well, and how the conversations that we've had and how we relate to them, and then what they then call us because we say certain things and in line with what you've just said, and it's like it's a lot of educating that needs to happen.
There you go.
And even if you could be educating the next generations in your own family, they still need to go mix and blend with people outside. We've got
even what you do inside of the home is very, very important. But like you say, once they come out of their home, they're going to be exposed to so much. And what's different from when I was growing up is once you come back home, the home influence is basically it. In other words, once you close that door and you're back home, now you've got the home influence.
Yeah.
These days, it's not like that. You close that door and you still got the outside influence because you've got your phone.
Yes.
Got your laptop. So as soon as a child goes on their phone, they're exposed to the outside world again. Mm-hmm. Do you get what I'm saying? They go on their laptop, they're exposed to the outside world. So there's never that, right, you're home now, let's just stick to this sort of influence or this sort of food or this sort of education. No, they're 24/7, they're exposed to the outside world now.
Right.
My next event is the Hidden Science of Reggae. And I'm just going to be focused on the fact that we need to put value in our culture because everyone else does.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying? We love our culture, but we're very open. So again,
Just
anyone can partake in the culture, which is great because our culture is amazing.
Yes.
It's absolutely, and it's very influential all over the world. But when you don't gatekeep your culture, then people can take liberties. So then you can have people who are from Ireland putting on an event called Reggae Land, and creating the biggest reggae festival in the whole of Europe.
Crazy.
And they're Irish. Could I, as a black person, go to Ireland and put on an event called Ireland, yeah?
No.
And book Irish artists, yeah? And enrich myself with Irish culture and make money from an Irish festival? Could I do that?
You could not.
But yet they can do that with our culture. Do you get me? And where you see them online and they're wearing like Jamaican t-shirts and all that sort of stuff. Could I do that? Wearing my Irish t-shirt and fly my Irish flag and put on a big festival called, and there's a couple reasons, but the one main reason why I couldn't do it, not because they wouldn't let me, because your culture is not powerful, fam. In other words, if I put on a festival talking about Ireland, Irish festival, yeah, it ain't getting the thousands and thousands of people that you guys get to Reggae Land, because our culture is powerful, rude boy.
No one would support that.
Yeah, do you get what I'm saying? Because if it was a thing where your culture was as powerful as ours, stay with your culture. Do your own festival. Why you need to do a festival called Reggae Land?
Yeah.
Do a festival about Ireland. Get Irish artists and do a huge festival. No, there's something about our culture. You're from the Irish culture, you're from Ireland, but there's something about this Jamaican culture, this Caribbean culture, man. It's so amazing, man. Let's put on an event called Reggae Land.
Mad thing. And you see it across the board, because like even with like a simple thing like seasoning, we've got our one, which is the official one, it's just Dunn's River. And then there's this next one, I'm not even going to call out the name because I'm not even going to give it the shine. It begins with a T. And if people have that in their cupboard, I said, you need to dash it. Dash it away. I said it. Yes, I did.
If only they knew. If only they knew.
They've just set up a whole seasoning line to literally try and dun out Dunn's River. Because they've mimicked and copied every single one. And the thing is, as you just said, because when they pull together for their economics and they're now distributing to certain stores, they're actually going to put the T one in the stores at a lower price, and only some of them will then integrate Dunn's River with it as well. And it's like, our people need to educate ourselves and be like, this is a counterfeit. Stick to the one you know, kind of thing. So that they've made a whole line that imitates that, and the list goes on, all sorts of other things. And
that goes down to, like you say, education, and then it's that cultural kind of heritage sort of affiliation that you have. In other words, if that means a lot to you, your culture, your heritage, and people taking your stuff and doing whatever with it, if that means a lot to you, then you're going to be like, rah, you see that tea brand? I'm not buying that again. But if it doesn't, like I was saying with the children, it doesn't really mean anything to them when you say you got to buy black or you got to stick to your own people. It doesn't mean anything to them. It has no cultural value for them. It has no meaning to them, because they're friends with everyone and they don't see a problem. There's no racism. There's nothing that's really stopping us like it was before. We don't have those issues. So if you don't see a problem, you're not gonna partake in the solution, like boycotting or anything. If you don't see a problem, then you're not gonna partake in it. And that's the thing. A lot of us, we don't see a problem here in the UK.
I think like as I've said before in this podcast, we need to talk more and we need to educate them more on the deeper things. It needs to go beyond surface, because we know and we can share, and they've got enough sense that they can receive it, but it's people actually taking the time to learn for themselves, because there's actually grown people who are clueless as well. True. Unfortunately. Yeah. You have the interest of self, like, we should love ourselves enough to actually have an interest to learn about ourselves, not just as an individual, but collectively as well. Because there's just so much beauty that is us. As you just said, other people around the world stay celebrating us and our things. And things just get lost on us, but I think we take it for granted because it's ours. So therefore, what can we really expect from the younger people? It's going to be the same vibration, you know? Something needs to get turned around or wake the people up so everyone's asleep.
And again, it's usually something painful. Again, you don't really see it until something painful happens. During 2020, there was the George Floyd thing happened, and then there was the riots in London.
Right.
And I love seeing it because it was young people stamping on the heads of people who weren't melanated.
Wow.
That's what you saw during the 2020 London riots. And then it was older people finger wagging them saying, oh no, you shouldn't do that. When these people we're just doing some peaceful rally and these people are saying, yeah, we're gonna come and infiltrate and we're gonna come cause trouble and all that. And when they came, those young people stomped them out. Like literally, there's videos of young people stamping on their heads. That's what I love about the young people, their energy and their, nah, we're not having it sort of thing. So when they realize there's a problem, they go in.
That's why they need to get empowered.
Yeah. When they realize there's a problem, they go in. It's when they don't realize it now, they're left astray or they're influenced to go a different route. But those young people that were quote unquote fighting during those 2020 riots, they were going in, mate. They were going in. It was, when I was reading the comments online, it was older people like, oh no, why are they doing this? Why are they fighting? And that's their energy, man.
Listen, the way I've had older people try, especially after the episode I did with HDW Patrol, Street Patrol. And shout out to Brother Harold. I had some ignorance popping up in my comments. Listen, the way I had to dun people in the comments, I had to dun them seriously, because I was like, what are you talking? Because they were literally like, oh, young people are the problem, blah, blah, blah. I've done them to the point I think they're unsubscribed.
No, it's important.
I had no rebuttal because I would tell you about yourself. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And I hate that talk about, we need to look at ourselves and blah, blah, blah. Every time we start talking about the problem, whatever you want to call the problem is the environment, institution, whatever, people are like, yeah, but, you know, black people, we're our own worst enemy and we should be looking at ourselves and blah, blah. Now, we should be. But when it comes on to learning about yourself, and let's go back to melanin, I always say, in order for you to learn about yourself, you got to learn about the reason why you don't learn about yourself. So for me, when I was teaching people about melanin, I'm saying, this is what melanin is, this is what it actually does. And this is what you've been taught. You've been taught that melanin is just the skin. You've been taught that melanin blocks sunlight. And you've been taught that melanin is just a pigment. Why have you been taught that? Now let's go down. When you start going back the why, now all of a sudden the finger goes from this to this. Now let's talk about you. Why did you teach me science in that way? Why have you not taught me about melanin? So yes, we need to look in the mirror and learn ourselves and focus on ourselves, but you cannot learn yourself fully without learning about them. You have to learn about the reason why you don't know certain things. Don't try and avoid that. The reason why they're not telling you the truth about melanin, the fact that melanin can split the water molecule into oxygen and hydrogen. Ask yourself why they don't teach that. Because they know it.
Yeah.
And that's when the finger goes to them, and that's what they don't want. They want us to be like, well, black people, we're our own worst enemy. And me, I'm a scientist. My thing is evidence. If you're saying we are our own worst enemy, that means there's no enemy worser. And I don't know if that's a real word, but if you're saying we are our own worst enemy, that means there's evidence. If I can show you evidence of what these people have done to us, you can show me evidence of us doing things that are worse. So let me show you what these people have done to us. They hung us on trees, and brought their children to come watch, and called it a picnic, Whilst they were hanging us, they burnt us and they cut off our testicles, and kept it as souvenirs in their yard. Now you're saying that black people were our worst enemy. So show me something that a black person has done that's worse than what I just said. Worse than that.
Right.
Yeah? And that's one example.
That's one example. And I can add to that because I'm currently producing a documentary, and the piece of rabbit hole that I am currently floating down is wild. Just to add to what you're saying.
What's the documentary about? You can't say it.
I mention it on the camera.
All right.
But I can give you evidence of some of the things I've learned in terms of adding to behaviour, and it's literally in recent times where certain people, especially in this country, were chopping heads off dogs and throwing them through black people's windows. They were chopping heads off pigs and throwing them through Asian people's windows. There was arson attacks. There was a lot of terrorism that was happening to like people of black and Asian people in this here country. And the way certain narratives have been switched needs to be told.
Yeah.
And I am telling it. So this is what I'm currently producing as we speak.
Let's go back to melanin again. Things they won't tell you. I talked about the fact that they used to hang slaves on the trees or whatever else, and keep their testicles as souvenirs and that sort of stuff. They used to eat our skin. They used to eat our melanin because their thing was, what makes you guys so great?
Right.
Do you understand? So they used to, when it came on to ancient Kemet, and we're not going to go down were the ancient Egyptians black? They were African, obviously. Do you get me? Mm-hmm. So people were like, yeah, but they look like the Egyptians of today. That's absolute foolishness.
I've been to Egypt and I've been on certain tours. And you come off the beaten track with the tour and you go bus round and go and see some of the tombs and things that are not on the tourist track.
Then you start to see certain
that's
things.
when you start to see.
And again, that's why they never tell you the truth about melanin.
Right.
There's scientific evidence to suggest that the mummies that were in the tombs that they took out of the tombs, stole from the tombs, they found that they were full of melanin. Their melanin content was extremely high in their hair and in their skin, And because of that, they were like, these people were full of melanin. What made these people so great? They're looking around, the writing on the wall, the hieroglyphs, they're looking at the pyramids and thinking, what made these people so amazing? It must be something about them. They're full of this black thing. How can we become as great as these people? You know what they did? They started to eat the mummies.
Wow.
They started to eat the mummies, and then they started to use the mummy's skull as medicine.
Wow.
Yeah. They started to make powders out of the skull, and they'd use the powder for like head ailments. And then this is what became like medieval cannibalism back in ancient European times. They used to use that as medicine. And that became the basis of what we now consider, medication and that sort of stuff. It was based off of what they were doing with us, basically, with our skin, with our skull, all that sort of stuff, whether it was making powders or they'd make an oil from our skin and all that sort of stuff. If we go deep in this thing, you wouldn't believe the stuff that they've done with melanin. But this is the reason why they don't want you to know the truth. Yeah, they want you to think that it's just this skin pigment that protects you from the sun. And it goes so much deeper than that.
Yeah, so there's a deep obsession with it.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'm like, if something is so irrelevant, why? You just stay obsessed with the people who have it.
Exactly.
If we were so irrelevant, leave us alone.
Exactly. And what's amazing is if we were obsessed with it as much as they were, we'd probably take care of ourselves much better.
It's true.
Because they are obsessed with melanin to this day. Yeah. Back then they were obsessed with eating it and utilizing it for all types of experiments. But to this day, obsessed with it. Yeah. To the point where they're making these melanin formulas to help white people tan better and that sort of stuff. So you can drink these things and then all of a sudden your melanin comes out more and that sort of stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, they are fascinated by melanin. And to the point where I believe we should be as fascinated as them because they study it, they love it, they envy it. I think we need to be as fascinated as they are.
We just stay distracted on foolishness though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I heard something a few years ago, and I haven't done research on it, that the price of melanin was like skyrocketing. I don't know if it's on the stock exchange or something, or the value of it was like beyond gold and everything else. I don't know if you know anything about that or heard it.
A gram of melanin costs more than a gram of gold or something like that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Way superseded it though.
Yeah.
But it wasn't put out.
Yeah, again, these are things that they're not going to tell us. There's a reason why. There's a reason why when black people go missing, when they're found without organs sometimes and that sort of stuff.
Right.
Because melanin is not just in our skin, melanin is in all of our organs as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, if this thing is so powerful, if this thing is somewhat of a semiconductor and it aids in electron flow, which is electricity through the body and that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's someone who just died and they're full of it, and you've got a relative who's down there dying who could utilize a kidney or a powerful organ that person's had, and you're a powerful person. But why are you going to put all of that stuff in the ground? all of that valuable stuff in the ground. Bring it over here, man. Let's take some of that stuff out.
Listen, this is why I've paid for my cremation, you know, whether people agree with it or not. I'm done paid for my funeral is paid for, and I'm getting cremated because I'm not. Take whose body?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
There's a black market there where they'll take organs, and then your organs cost a certain amount. Do you get me? Your heart, your eyes, oh my gosh, they love your eyes and all that sort of stuff. So when you watch a movie like Get Out, all of a sudden you're starting to realize this is just fiction, you know.
Listen, I could only watch that movie once and I swear I was traumatized. Get Out moved something in my soul. It was a bit too much. I'll tell you how much, it's a fun fact. Get Out shook me so much.
Yeah.
That by the time I finished watching it, I had to find the deepest roots and culture I could think of at that time. I went and put on Morgan Heritage and was blasting through all of their tunes just to reset my vocation and my vibration. Yeah. Literally, I was like, what is that? Nah.
And that is a good example of why people don't want to know the truth.
Yeah.
Because it could be that mind-blowing, like, what? That's really happening?
Yeah, it was too much.
Do you get what I'm saying? It's too much. So people would just rather not know. Don't tell me that. Nah, don't tell me what they used to do with melanin. Don't tell me what they're doing now. Don't tell me about that. I mean, you think about today, people will say it's a conspiracy theory, but you know what I mean? What they're doing with melanin and putting it in bioelectronics, and then there's evidence to suggest that they're going to start using these bioelectronics as like health devices. In other words, you got an ailment, you could take this melanin battery and it could help with your ailment. And then the people who are non-melanated, they're going to be taking these melanin batteries and consuming melanin in that way just to help them with certain issues and that sort of stuff. When you start to go deep with it, I can understand why people do not want to know the truth. They don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because if you do, you'll be like my guy in the Get Out movie. You'll be like... crying, because that's how it will traumatize you, knowing the truth about what these people do with melanin. You don't even want to know how like demonic these people are. Right. Do you get what I'm saying? So I totally understand why certain people would be like, you know what, I'd rather not know the truth, you know. People sitting in their ignorance. Their ignorance is bliss. It is bliss. It is bliss. But at the same time, a sad way to live. Oh man, we've only got one life, man. Yeah. Do it deep, I say. Yeah. Do you have anything last anything you'd like to share or impart on the people? Any lasting impressions or? My thing, and it's always the same thing, is knowing yourself from a black perspective, knowing that we are in an environment that's going to try to confuse you. That is one of their number one aims, is to try to confuse you about who you are. Try to confuse you about what you see when you look in the mirror. Do you get what I'm saying? As a black man or a black woman, try to confuse you about who you are. So your thing should be to learn about who you are, especially from a black perspective. So whether you're learning about health, you need to be learning about health from a black perspective. You need to be learning about foods that are conducive to your type of melanin. Yeah. If you are someone who's lighter skinned or even of a different race, knowing about how much sunlight you do need. Do you get what I'm saying? And what's the difference? Darker skin, lighter skin, and all that sort of stuff. Because my thing is, the more you know yourself, the more you're able to navigate certain environments, knowing who you are. Because that is the key. The key is you. You are the key to everything. You're the solution to everything. So knowing who you are and learning about yourself is the way to not become confused, because that is their number one aim, to keep us confused, especially about who we are. So my thing is clarity, have total clarity. And that's the reason why I wrote my book, for people to have total clarity on what melanin is and what it truly does. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Finally, we get to do it. Finally, you made it. Made it. Oh my God. You know what? I should share with the people. Go on. That you, as I said to you on the phone, you was one of the first people who I told that I was going to do this podcast. I remember. I told you I was going to do this podcast back in February 2025. I started this podcast September
2025.
Remember.
Look how big old window. You had the exclusive. This podcast had no name.
Yeah.
It had no nothing. It was just, I had an idea that I'm going to do podcasts.
Yeah.
And I told you.
Remember
and
what I
now
said?
you're here. What did you say? Go on.
Remember what I said? I said, next time I see you, I want you to tell me that you started it. In other words, you have to have at least one episode under your belt next time I see you. Remember?
And I did.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. Put it out there, mate. Trust me.
Leon, you're a treasure.
And you too. I appreciate you bringing me on. And like I say, put this stuff out there, and years to come, people will, stumble across this interview and be like, wow, amazing. From like, I don't know, 50 years or whatever. That's the importance of putting this stuff out.
That's it. And you continue to do the work, and we appreciate you, man.
Love.
Appreciate you. Another incredible episode. Leon is a true asset to us. His work is incredible, and I urge everyone to please tap in, get this book on melanin, go to his lectures, tap into the Hidden Science Academy and all the work Leon and your sister do. We didn't even mention her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We got Vanika.
Yeah, see it, Vanika as well. And yeah, once again, stay blessed.